Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to Power Outage. What outage? A Tesla Powerwall story. It's a webinar hosted by A&R Solar, located in Seattle, Washington, and Portland, Oregon. It's April 23rd, 2020, 12 p.m., and we serve both of those states I mentioned, Washington, Oregon, both border to border. We're going to allow people to file into their seats. And in the meantime, there's going to be a series of short polls I'll bring up on screen to kind of break the ice and get to know you. And I'll get into some housekeeping and an introduction of our speaker here in a moment. But here's a fun and interesting poll I'm going to launch right now. It is, what company were scientists working for when lithium-ion batteries were first proposed and tested in 1976? Sorry about the typo there. What company were scientists working for when lithium-ion batteries were first proposed and tested in 1976? Give you about 30 seconds to answer. I see already about 20% of you have voted. Jump on in there and get your vote counted. We know how important voting is. Up 60% now. I'll kind of cap this out at 80%. Get your questions in there last few seconds. Once again, you're at the A&R Solar Tesla Powerwall webinar. You're in the right place. Just breaking the ice with a couple of polls. Up to 70%. If we can't get a few more in there, then I'll shut her down. All right. Very good. Thank you for voting. Let's see, 34% of you thought it was Exxon, followed by Panasonic. The answer is Exxon. TJ, we do have a very astute number of pollists or people here attending. It's true, Exxon got into lithium-ion battery storage in 1976. In fact, fossil fuel companies have made significant investments in the last 10 years in both battery storage and solar power. So let me launch another one. Again, we're at the A&R Solar webinar for battery storage featuring Tesla. And I'm gonna launch a few more polls just to get to know everyone here. Just wanna find out what's your main interest in the webinar today, and pick one that suits you the most. You know, we got some techie people here. We've got people interested in battery integration, got new construction going on, or Tesla devotees. All of you are welcome. All right, we already got 45% of you in. Just give another 10 seconds to get these votes in. Thank you so much. All right, 5 more seconds. Very good. And I'm going to close that one up now. Thank you. All right, I'll share those results. Oh, interesting. A lot of people are here for battery integration concepts, how to pair up battery storage with solar, with EV charging, vehicle to grid, other concepts, and then some folks that like Tesla are getting ready for new construction. Thank you so much. 2 more. We're going to get the content going at 12:05. Just going to launch a few more polls here to get to know you. Here's one more. You know, power loss is a big deal for some people, some it's not, but we want to get a sense of what how power outages affect you. So you should see a new poll on screen that says just a nuisance, kind of drives us and the kids crazy when the power is out. 1 or more of us can't work when there's no power. That's critical. Lost food, or spoilage, or water issues. Go ahead and fill that out. What applies to you? Give it out 10 more seconds. Once again, you're at the A&R Solar webinar today on April 23rd, a Tesla Powerwall story. We'll get to the content in 1 more minute. Just launching a couple of polls here to get to know you. Thanks, I'm gonna close that one up. 75% of you got your votes in, appreciate that. Give you a quick peek behind the scenes here about how y'all are feeling. Just a nuisance, drives us crazy, the leading response, but some of you, over a quarter of you, can't work when there's no power at home, so that's crucial. Thanks for that. Last one, then we'll get to our speaker and our content. What fits you best from a profile perspective? We just want to know how to serve you today as we answer questions, and how we can serve you in the future for your solar and storage needs. You also might be a general contractor, or an architect, or another solar professional, you're all welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Michael.
Yes, sir.
Oh, just make sure you, the webinar dropped my audio call, so I joined via computer. Seems to be working.
Yeah, see and hear you. Perfect. All right, 5 more seconds. We already got 75% of you voting. Thank you. I will close it now. We'll share some of the results. Awesome. Almost half of you are home or business owners. Got some GCs, architects out there, other professionals. Some of you have solar or batteries now. You want to learn more. Some of you are looking for battery storage. Well, good. You're definitely in the right place. All right, so thank you. I'm going to hit record so we can save this for posterity and move forward, I should say. All right, I'm Michael O'Brien. I'm the director here at ANR Solar. It is April 23rd, 2020. You are at the right place for the webinar Power Outage. What outage? A Tesla Powerwall story. We are broadcasting from the homes of ANR Solar staff in Seattle, Washington, and Portland, Oregon, and we're super grateful for the attendance today and hope you've cozied up to your screens. And we have TJ Merrill, our expert presenter, waiting in the wings. He's already got his screen shared. So by way of introduction, ANR Solar is one of the oldest turnkey solar installers in the Pacific Northwest, now working in our 13th year of business. We focus on high quality solar installations and battery installations for homes, businesses, and utilities. And over the last year and a half, and now a little bit more, have become the largest West Coast installer of Tesla Powerwall batteries outside of California. So I know that public safety is also on everyone's mind, so I'll make sure that you all know that ANR Solar is up and going, but has changed our business practices for the time being to strictly adhere to the health official guidelines given by our states. Sales designers are working with customers at a distance to get ready for the sunny season, which is kind of now. And our field staff is abiding by the governor's specific orders given in each of our 2 states. So please contact us via our website if you have any questions about how we're still working and keeping everyone safe. All right, so let's get started. Housekeeping for this is your microphones are going to be muted for the event. So go ahead and tell your dogs and your kids to go crazy behind you. No sweat there, we won't hear you. If you do have a question, click the question mark icon on the right and get it in there, type it in, and I'll prompt TJ with the questions throughout the presentation. And we have some time saved at the end for Q&A. You can also raise your hand, but if you're raising it to ask a question, you'll still need to hit that question mark bubble to tell me what that is. Also, if you already sent us a question as part of your registration, I'll try to get that in front of TJ today. All right, so let's embarrass this guy a little tiny bit here. Thomas J. Merrill, or TJ Merrill, is a 4+ year solar and battery storage veteran and the Washington residential sales manager for ANR Solar. He's a former entrepreneur, business leader, consummate tinkerer, father of 2, a UW graduate himself, and fun fact at Microsoft, he actually shared the stage with Bill Gates on a number of occasions. He is nationally certified for solar technical sales, sits on the advisory board for several major solar and inverter manufacturers and battery now. And he is here to present some great content and stimulate some great questions. So take it away, TJ.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks for taking the time today. I love this stuff. I love solar. I love battery storage. So we're going to jam through about a half an hour worth of content, show you lots of examples, and then try to leave some time for Q&A. I know there's a lot of questions out there. Love to answer every single one. We'll take whatever time we need. If we can't do it then, we'll follow up with you or give us a ring and we'll get you an answer. As far as an agenda, we're going to just really quickly hit solar really quickly, and then energy storage. You know, what are the reasons? Why do people consider, why do they install a system like a Tesla Powerwall? How does it work? What do I need? What does it cost? And then Q&A. As Michael said, we do residential, commercial, and utility scale solar and residential and commercial battery systems. Tesla Powerwall is definitely the leading one on the residential side, and that's where we're going to be focused. But we've also if you're on the commercial side of things, late this year, next year, there's going to be a lot of storage solutions for commercial projects that will be a lot more approachable than they are today. So solar, the basic solar for you that haven't ever used it, very straightforward modules on your roof or a ground mount, take in and generate electricity, DC direct current, that is then inverted either at the module or on the wall on a string inverter, and then inverted to AC current, alternating current. That's what your home uses. All of that power then is used, whatever your house needs, it'll pull from that amount that's being generated. If you don't have enough, it'll pull from the grid. If there's excess, it'll go out on the grid. And as that flow goes forward and backwards, your meter actually will spin forward and backwards. So on a nice day, if it was an old analog meter, they're now digital, it would be spinning backwards fairly significantly. So, and that is called a net meter, and we call it net metering because you only pay for the net used. So you generate solar during the day, you get credits for anything you don't use, and then at night you use your credits, and that lowers your energy bill. Our average system out there is about 10 kilowatts, which offsets $1,000 every year. And these systems are designed for 25 plus years. So they're every year it's going to save you, on average $12,000 to $14,000 each and every year. And as electricity rates go up, it saves you more. So clean, renewable source of power. It is tied to the grid. So every grid-tied solar system is mandated by electrical code to shut down in the event of a power outage. So you are technically still generating some power up here, but it's not allowed to flow because if there's a lineman working on the lines outside, down the street, we don't want to be backfeeding power and electrocuting them because they think the lines are down or dead. So the battery system includes all of the islanding, all the transfer switch, as well as the battery, so we can do it absolutely safely. So solar, whether you do a battery system or not, it is totally optional. You can go solar without battery. You can go battery without solar. But if you do solar, you get a 26% federal tax credit. So now you're going to get back a lot of money that you would have otherwise have sent off to the IRS. And if your battery system is paired with solar, you also can qualify for 26% federal tax credit on the battery system as well. So we get lots of people saying, I don't really want solar, I just want a battery backup. But once they kind of run the numbers, it's like, oh, I guess that kind of makes sense to pair those two. You don't have to. We can do grid tied. We're actually doing some interesting projects for water districts where we have power walls backing up water pumping. They're down in a vault, so it can certainly run without solar. So you get the increase in your home value, you get all of the utility savings, and the system pays for itself through that federal tax credit as well as through utility savings. Common question is, does it make sense in the Northwest? Without net metering, I would have a hard time making a case for it, but with net metering, absolutely. Our spring, summer, and fall, we outproduce oftentimes California, Arizona, Hawaii, where they have a fairly flat generation month to month. Ours, we do have a bell curve. So the green is generation, the red is consumption for this client. And you can see here, we're generating a lot of excess in the spring, summer, and fall. And then we apply those credits here in the winter and at night when we don't make as much. The battery system is what allows your solar to come back online. So your grid-tied solar system, when it comes online in the morning, what it does is it looks at the grid's voltage and frequency, and it synchronizes to it, and then it sends the power onto the line. So it is tied to the grid, hence grid tied. So a battery system like Tesla Powerwall, we call it a hybrid grid tied battery system, because it can work both with the grid when the grid is up and running. Your battery could be just sitting there waiting for an outage, or it can be actively working to self-consume. But when the grid is down, that's what's important. So during the daytime, when the grid is down, you're running your home's loads, whatever is being backed up from solar and the battery. So if solar can do 100% of it, then it'll do 100% and the rest will go into the battery until the battery is full. And if the battery ever does become full, maybe you're generating so much, then the Powerwall will tell the solar system to pause for 5 minutes, and then you'll run from battery for 5 minutes, then come back online. At night, obviously no solar at night unless it's a super big moon. I've actually heard some of them have turned on at night when it's super bright, but you're generally not generating anything of any consequence, and so you're running completely from the battery at night. Here in the Northwest, we don't have time of use like you hear in a lot of metropolitan areas. We expect them to come to the Northwest, but until then, our primary use is really backup power for your home. In California, you'll often see people will install battery systems that shut down when the grid goes out. Those are grid-tied battery systems. It doesn't make any sense here in the Northwest. We always do a backup system just because that's what makes sense. Some people do it to increase their independence. Maybe they don't trust the utility, or they think the rates are going to go up, or they want to self-consume their solar at night. But other people want to help transition to clean energy, and they think, and I agree with them, battery storage, energy storage is absolutely critical to move to a high amount of renewable energy on the grid. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, but if we can store that energy. So today it's pumped hydro. There's definitely a lot of big utility scale battery systems. There will be others on the market. But in the residential, really backup power and self-consumption is what 90% of the people say. One of my clients out on Bainbridge Island had a lot of outages, and he actually said apparently the power went out here about 4 a.m. and is still out. Best thing is we didn't even notice. It is that fast. It's a quarter of a second to transfer, so it's nearly instantaneous. You might see the lights flicker. If it happens when you weren't really paying attention, you wouldn't know it. You will get a notification, and I'll show you some of the mobile views of it, but if you have an outage, you will get a notification. I recently took a community emergency response training through a local fire department, and the takeaway for me is you really should be ready. They said 2 weeks, you should be ready to be on your own for 2 weeks after a major event, and that could be, the most common ones here in the Northwest would be an earthquake. So Governor Inslee said we might not have power for 2 months, but 2 weeks is a good, I think that's kind of the goal. Everybody should have a plan of what you're going to do for 2 weeks. We have lots of storms here: windstorms, ice storms, snowstorms. We've had outages because of fires in the mountains that have taken out transmission lines, which cause lots of issues. There's talk of a mega drought in the Southwest. This is actually behind Grand Coulee Dam many years ago, but we shouldn't take hydropower for granted. And then obviously winter storms happen all the time. I just checked my UPS and it said we've had 26 outages in the last 2 years here at my place in Seattle and Wedgwood. So as you're using solar, a typical day looks something like this. Green is your consumption. Yellow is the generation from a typical nice day. So you're consuming your power here. So this would be covered by battery. You would need to be covered by battery, and this would need to be covered by battery. So that's a typical day. And this is important because this is key to how we design a system. So here in the Northwest, this is a typical 9 kilowatt array. We talk about kilowatt hours. A kilowatt hour, the best description I can think of is, think of your microwave on for 1 hour. That much energy is 1 kilowatt hour. And a typical solar system will generate between 10 and 50 kilowatt hours on a day, depending on what month of the year it is. And then here is an example of home loads for this house. And you can see that in the winter, there is a pretty good discrepancy. So this is where we design a battery system for, is are we backing up all of the loads and we're worried about winter outages? So we'll design a system for here, or maybe somebody says, I'm really worried about outages for an earthquake. So here's a great example. We're in April, so this system would generate 33 kilowatt hours a day, but I'm only using 24. So if there were an earthquake right now with this system, with a battery system, I could easily go until October without any fuel. I don't need to run a generator. It's completely automatic, quiet, clean, and no maintenance. In the winter, we do have a lot less generation, so we're down into the 7 kilowatt hours. But if I'm only using 10 for my really essentials, that means I only have a net loss of 3 per day. So a 10 kilowatt hour battery system could last 3 days if I conserved. If I don't conserve, I'm going to use it up in half dozen hours. But the average outage in the Northwest is less than 8 hours, so it definitely can cover you. So how does it work? I'll use this example, the bathtub example. The shower head is solar, the grid is a faucet, the tub is your battery, and the drain is your usage. So on a typical day, this is being filled up, and maybe you need some of the grid at night or in the morning, but then most of it can be filled up from solar. And then when the grid goes out, now your loads are the drain on your house. And so it's the combination of how much solar do you have and how much do you have stored in the battery in your tub that will tell you how long it will last. And I can personally, I've been able to make my systems run for days. I just cut it down to the bare necessities, lights and internet. I'm not running any heavy loads to try to extend my battery. So 110 kilowatt hour battery would get a day of standby power if I was doing 10 kilowatt hours of usage. So brighter months, you go much, much longer. Most common things that we back up: refrigerators, freezers. I personally lost years ago easily $1,000 in food twice. I had a fridge and a freezer, both of them. We just done Costco runs because we knew there was a big outage coming. Both of them went out, it warmed up. After a couple of days, all that food was spoiled. If you have a gas furnace, even though you have, it's gas, it still needs power, right? To run the igniter, run the central furnace fan. Lights, outlets, phone chargers, internet equipment, security equipment, the garage door, so you still use your garage door opener, and then critically any pumps. So we have lots of clients that, water pumps, septic pumps, sump pumps. Without those, you could have tens of thousands of dollars in damage, for instance, with a sump pump if it's not running. I did have one person I talked to, they had $30,000 in damage. They went on vacation, storm hit, power went out, sump pump was out and flooded their basement. If you would have had a battery system, it would automatically taken over and they would have been fine. There are lots of battery systems. We probably looked at 40 of them, and we constantly survey the market for battery systems that we think are a really good fit for the Northwest and for our clients. Tesla is by far the most popular, mainly due to its scalability. So I'm not going to talk about others, but LG is the other battery that we use quite a bit, but Tesla by far is the one that we use the most because it is so scalable. So one Powerwall will give you 5 kilowatts of power and 13 kilowatt hours of stored energy, and we can do up to 10 per 200 amp panel. So that's 50 kilowatts of power and 135 kilowatt hours of storage. So our average is 2, very common that we do 2 Powerwalls for a home just to get a little bit more power and a little longer run times. And they charge from solar or grid if you don't have solar. That is kind of an important a question is, well, what happens if I discharge my battery and the grid comes back and solar's low? Well, if there is a major event, Tesla actually will turn on what they call Storm Watch, and it will allow the battery to charge from either solar or the grid or both actually, and it'll recharge itself as quickly as it can. So this, with Powerwalls, they can be added to new or existing installations. So if you have an old, string inverter from years and years ago, we can pair it with one or more Powerwalls. Or if you have a new installation, we can add it there as well. There is no generator charging today, but we can definitely integrate one. We have asked Tesla to add that functionality, but nothing to announce at this time. We can back up to a 30 amp breaker. So if you have a 40 amp heat pump, we would need to have at least 2 Powerwalls. The inspectors would require that by code. And again, 26% federal tax credit when paired with a new or existing solar system. There's absolutely what we really like about Tesla, years ago we did, lead acid and AGM batteries, and we had to be really careful. If you discharge them too much, you ruin the battery. So what we really like about Powerwalls is they are wall mountable. They are floor stackable against a wall up to 3 deep. We can do up to 10 of them, and they can go 100% discharge and have no issue with them whatsoever. 5,000 watts of power or 7,000 for a minute. So there's it packs a lot of power in a small one. And it can be used for backup power, solar self-consumption, when and if the utility rates come in where they have time-based controls where they say between 3 and 7 o'clock, the rates are double or triple due to peak, needing to reduce the demand during those peaks. Very easy to switch that on, and I'll show you the mobile app. Turn that on and save yourself, pay for itself even faster. It is warranted for 10 years, unlimited cycles. If you used it heavily, if you did full self-consumption, you're going to do at max one or 2 cycles a day. But if it's in backup mode, I would expect this, if you're not discharging it heavily all the time, I would expect it to last a lot longer than 10 years. There are no moving parts in it at all. The bottom part of it is the battery pack, and it actually uses the same cells that you see in the Model 3 and the Model Y, the 2170 Panasonic cells. So the bottom half of it is all battery, and then in the middle here is the inverter. This is just a battery inverter. It's not a solar inverter, just a battery inverter. And then they do have a cooling system. So the only moving part is a little pump in here that cools this if it gets too hot. The bottom 2/3 of this can actually be submerged in water. like I was saying, we had a water district where we mounted these on the wall, and they actually were worried, if the water comes up, this would be the high water point that they would ever see. And it's like, yeah, that's no problem. It's fully waterproof for up to 30 minutes submerged, the bottom 2/3.
TJ, I got a question.
Fire away.
Aaron asks what the chemistry is of the Powerwall, and kind of generally speaking, what are we talking about when we're talking about chemistry from our other options?
Yeah, the chemistry of both LG and Tesla is nickel, manganese, cobalt. And that chemistry tends to do much better in the cold. Years ago, we did Zonins, and what we found is below 42 degrees, they would not charge. So that was a LiFePO, lithium iron phosphate battery. So you do have to take into consideration, temperatures. When we're doing these in Eastern Washington, we always put them inside. It doesn't necessarily have to be conditioned space, but insulated. If it gets below freezing, you want to keep them, out of really cold weather. There are other chemistries out there, and I expect we'll see lots of other chemistries. But NMC, nickel, manganese, cobalt, is what this uses, and it performs better than any other chemistry that we found so far. Next common question is, what can I run on a Powerwall? A single one up to a 30 amp breaker. So, light fixtures, small appliances, maybe even some medium-sized appliances. 5 kilowatts is a pretty good size portable generator, except you don't have all the noise, the maintenance, oil changes, air filters, winterizing it, completely automatic, quiet, clean. If you need to run anything heavier, we always look at it very closely about what you're running, and then we'll recommend how many Powerwalls you can use. We do have lots of singles and doubles and triples out there, with the average being 2. Especially if you want to run any pumps, we usually will need a couple of them. So what does it look like as far as electrically? We have the grid into your utility meter. Our most common installation is whole house backup or whole panel backup. So let's say this is a 200 amp service, which is very common. We actually intercept your service entrance and put in Tesla's backup gateway, and I'll show you pictures of that. This is a 200 amp transfer switch. It's not a relay like you see in like old generators and stuff that take 5 or 10 seconds. This is a quarter of a second, half a second. It's nearly instantaneous. It's all done in silicon, so it's boom, automatically kicked over. That then is wired into your existing panel that you have there, and so we'll back up everything. Very common that we back up everything in a panel with 1 or 2 Powerwalls. Your solar, Tesla is not a solar inverter, Tesla Powerwall. So your solar and your solar inverter are going to be separate. And like I said, we've used it with microinverters, string inverters, optimized string inverters. It's compatible with really any residential grid-tied solar system. We haven't found any that it isn't compatible with yet. So here's what it looks like on the wall. Meter will pipe into the gateway. The gateway is really the brains of the system. This is where all the metering is, the disconnect, and all the intelligence to control the battery. The battery really is a battery, and this is all the intelligence. There's your solar inverter and your main service panel. If your system is small enough and it's a single Powerwall, we sometimes can put it the Tesla gateway in between your panel and another panel that we move essential loads into, and we just protect that one small panel. So that is possible, but not all the time. There are some very specific engineering requirements Tesla has, and code has and the local jurisdictions, the inspectors. So we have to kind of do whatever the lowest common denominator is of those three to tell you which way we can do it. I just pulled some pictures of some pretty common ones. This is a single Powerwall with about 9 kilowatts of solar, and we're backing up one of the panels. This one has twin Powerwalls, and we're backing up his EV charger. In this case, it is a Tesla charger, and Tesla actually has just rolling out an intelligence so that if there is an outage, it won't drain your battery into your car. Then we won't be able to get it back out. It actually will know your car and the Tesla Powerwall system will communicate. They know about each other, and if there's a power outage, it'll essentially ask you how much of your battery do you want to use in your car if you need to use it to go somewhere. Otherwise, it'll reserve it to run loads in your home. Up here is a triple Powerwall, and here it's floor stacked in a garage. The interesting thing about this one was this client had a sump pump and a septic pump. That was his main motivator. He's on Bainbridge Island, loses power lots of times, 5-10 times a year. So the outages, he works from home. So it was really a challenge for him. With all the outages. He did have a generator, but he hated running it. Loud, noisy maintenance. This one down here is an interesting case. This is an MD that works in disaster preparedness for the state. And he said when there's an earthquake or other major crisis, he will be leaving home when everybody else is running home. So he wanted to make sure that his family, his son lives in the home as well. He works at Microsoft. So they said, we just want to take care of the family in case we're not around. And so we did quad power walls and a 14 kilowatt solar array for him. Another Bainbridge Island, triple power walls, wall mounted, about a 20 kilowatt system. And then this is a neighbor of my in-laws. I showed you a picture of our cabin. This is actually right next door. His goal was, I want to run my generator less. We get a lot of outage and he's tired. I'm tired of running my generator. I think last I checked with him, he was on his second or third one. He just wore him out. Having an outage, get out, drag it out, start it up, run it. Then he was always upset that his transfer switch for his generator never had the circuits he needed. So he's trying to work from home and he doesn't have power in his office. So it has, all sorts of things. So we backed up almost everything. So this is a before picture and then this is an after picture. So we did a lot of cleaning up of his electrical. We got everything he needed to back up in one panel. Everything he didn't want to back up was put in another panel. And since we installed it, I think he's had 15 outages. So here's a picture of if you have one or more cars, Tesla, here's a Model S, Model X. If you add a Powerwall, it's the same app that you would have, and you just click on that to get to the Tesla app. If you have multiple sites, I have a client that has, vacation home, so he'll see, cabin and my home, and then his Tesla all on one. Just going to switch over. Let me know if you can see this. Let's see, where is it? So there isn't a desktop app for Tesla. This is actually, I'm just running an emulator here, but this is that site I showed you right here. This is his home. He was gracious enough to share his login for me so I can show you literally what he sees. So single power wall, you can see here it's charging. We can look at the power flow. So here we see he's generating. It's kind of not a very nice day out today, but he's still generating almost what his home is using. And I did set his to discharge yesterday so you could see it charging. So here's solar, here's the grid, and here's Powerwall. Because I set it to charge before this, it's taking 100% of the solar to go into charging. The reason Tesla does that is if you get really specific on the federal tax credit, it says to get 100% of the tax credit, you need to be charged 100% from solar. So Tesla sort of puts that in place. It will only charge as much solar as, or it will only charge the battery with as much solar as solar is being generated. If there were an outage, if you saw a big X over here, or before, if there was a winter storm coming, it would actually charge the battery from the grid in an emergency situation, and I'll show you what that looks like. But if we dive in here, if we want to see what his home looks like, it's going to back up to yesterday. We can see, his home loads. You can see it goes up and down. He has 3 refrigerators, electric hot water. So you see, spikes going on. But if you look, it's all under 5 kilowatts. So all of that is covered with a Powerwall from a power standpoint. Now we can layer over solar. And I kind of like this because we had yesterday was kind of more like a winter month where we saw, okay production, but it wasn't great. 6-7 kilowatts, which is what we expect on kind of a dreary day. It was raining all day yesterday. His home used 31. So he's got 13.5 kilowatts plus 7. So he's got about 20 kilowatt hours. So if this day were to repeat, he would get through most of the night. In the morning, his battery would be fully discharged, but in the morning, it would come back online and be running from solar. He might have to, turn down some of his loads to get through, but he would be just fine. He probably wouldn't run his generator at all. And if I turn on the Powerwall, you can see here is where it was charging with excess, but it was still trying to self-consume as much as possible. If I look at an earlier day, here's a really nice day. You can see that, we had huge production, probably 50 kilowatt hours, 46 kilowatt hours. His home used 31. So solar covered all that, and then it charged the battery with the excess. And then I set his to use half of it for self-consumption. So it covered these loads up until, late at night. It was about probably 10, 11, something like that, 10 o'clock. So you get a good view of what's going on. See, it's charging 59%. It is very easy to come in here and customize it. If I wanted, and what we recommend in the winter, set your reserve to 90% or more, or just flip it to backup mode. And that means it'll charge up, stay charged up, and 100% of it is available for an outage. And then down here, you'll see Storm Watch. This is on by default. So if for whatever reason, if you discharge the battery, maybe you had 2 outages. You had an outage, it was fully drained, and then another storm is rolling in. With this active, Tesla looks at the National Weather Service. If it sees a storm warning, then it will recharge via the grid as well. So as an exception. If we have more expensive power, between 3 and 8 p.m., like most metros are, that's eventually coming. This has you covered there too. It's just a matter of turning it on, going in, it'll ask you some questions about what utility you're in and everything else, and then it'll automatically learn your home. So a lot of artificial intelligence kind of looking at what's going on in your home, and then it will try to optimize the use of solar and battery to save you as much money as possible. Again, we don't have those here today in the Northwest, but smart meters are being installed. So I would expect them in the next few years, especially as we're growing and we're bringing on peaker plants now. A lot of natural gas peaker plants are coming on. So those cost more, they have a lot more pollution. So try not to do those. The utilities will probably get the okay to start charging more during those peak hours to try to reduce how much peak power that we're pulling from fossil fuels. Any questions, Michael?
Yeah, one question I attempted to answer in text, but tell us a little bit about where you'd recommend locating these power walls in a residence, indoor, outdoor, etc.
Yeah, we definitely recommend indoor. If you look, let's see. So if we have no other choice, let's see, I'm sorry, 22. Just 1 second, I'll bring up a picture. This one. So whenever possible, we install them indoors. So I purposely showed you 3 indoor. This client, he had no option to put them indoors. He just literally didn't have the space. And we said, we can put them outside. They will definitely work, even down to, actually I can pull up the specs. It goes down to like -4. But once they get really cold, they will definitely discharge, no problem. But charging, they will try to, it will reduce how much charge it'll take from solar to try to protect themselves if they get really, really cold. So that really doesn't happen when they're indoors, but it does when they're outdoors. So indoors, if at all possible, we always try to co-locate them near the meter, especially if we're doing whole house, because of the, we're dealing with some fairly large wires with the service entrance conductors. So those are the ones that are about as big as your thumb. So it's a lot of electrical work if we're doing a whole house. Here's the backup gateway. So we're literally intercepting, your electrical service after the meter. It goes into this backup gateway and then back out to your panel.
Thank
Other
you.
questions?
Yeah, another question. You partially covered this, I think, but it's worth repeating. Which inverters this question's from Gary, do the Tesla Powerwalls integrate with, and how do they communicate? What's the interaction?
Yeah, good question. I'll use this as an example. We actually can communicate with any grid-tied solar system. And what Tesla uses is called power shift control, power frequency shift control. That's kind of a fancy term for saying it sends a signal on the grid, on your microgrid. It sends a signal to tell the inverter to shut off. So it just literally raises the frequency to like 63 hertz from 60 hertz, which is normal US. It just raises it up to tell the inverter go offline. The inverter drops offline. It waits 5 minutes and the inverter tries to come back online. So it communicates over your existing electrical system. Um, yeah, does that answer your question? So we don't have to wire these directly like communication into an inverter to get the two to work together. So we really can use, I mean, if you have a 10-year-old solar system with an old string inverter, it'll still work.
Awesome. Gary said that was a good answer. Another question here is, what's the benefit of, different inverters as it relates to the Powerwall, and maybe just from a solar perspective too, as having a single inverter versus maybe microinverter.
Yeah, I think both work really well. This client was microinverters because we knew we were going to put in Tesla Powerwalls, and this one we would have needed, I think, 3 optimized string inverters because it was such a large array. So we decided just to do microinverters, so we could just do one AC combiner to kind of simplify the design. So I would say it really depends. We have an internal document that's like a dozen pages long that talks about all the pros and the cons of each inverter platform. The 2 most common, SolarEdge and Enphase, those are the 2 leaders. They probably have 90% market share here in the United States, and that's what we use. But like I said, we have like a dozen-page document. It talks about the pros and the cons, where to use one, where to use the other. They really are fairly interchangeable. Um, so they can work with both. I wouldn't say there's really one advantage to one over the other, with Powerwall specifically. Um, uh, it's really depending on your situation. So we would work with you and look at it and recommend, hey, because you have this, we would recommend you use this inverter. But again, it really works with anyone. Our cabin has an old Selectria, so one Powerwall works great. We'll probably do 2 Powerwalls up there, just because we want to back up a 40 amp heat pump, as well as just have good long run time on it.
Great. If you have time for another question, I don't know if you're moving on to something else, but we have a question from Chuck about what the future holds.
What does the future hold? That is a great question, and luckily I actually wrote up a quick slide on it. I think home batteries, we're seeing it becoming very common, that people will buy a home battery for backup. The cost, I think, will go down maybe 5% a year, kind of like solar. Gets a little bit better, a little bit cheaper each year. Kind of like a flat screen TV, but you really want to wait years before you can watch TV. So I think time is good now. Federal tax credit, 26% ends this year, so you have to be installed by the end of the year to take advantage of that 26% tax credit. Next year goes to 22, 22%, and then 0 for residential. Next, I think your EV is going to get smarter. Today, you really can't integrate it in any meaningful way. I mean, if you want to run your laptop off your EV, you certainly can do that. Plug an inverter in, clip it onto your 12-volt battery, but not in any meaningful way. I do think those are going to get smarter. We're hoping to test maybe the end of this year a grid-tied vehicle to home charger that would allow us, still you would need a Powerwall system because it's a grid tied system. So you'd still need something like Powerwall to form a microgrid. But I think they will get smarter. Maybe in the next couple of years, you'll have an outlet. Tesla actually said on their Cybertruck that they'll have a higher powered outlet that you could use to run heavy tools in the field. You can run heavy tools in the field. You could also run a cable to your refrigerator. You could do a manual transfer switch, or integrate it in with your. Hopefully by then Tesla will integrate some type of auxiliary charging of the batteries, not just from solar or the grid, but kind of a third. If we had a Tesla, you could plug it in. It would be smart enough to be able to pull and push power in. We're asking. We're essentially saying if you don't do it, somebody else will, and that's an interesting thing. I think we'll see additional chemistries getting better. One thing I really like is that if you install a Powerwall today, it's using their current battery technology, and in a couple of years, if they have a new battery, maybe it's a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit more power, we can swap it out, or you can just add it as a second one. So you can more than double your capacity down the road. So it is very flexible, upgradable. I could see. Actually, I just had this happen. Had a client. He's like, he put in, he added one to his home, and then he put one in his mom's home. He wanted to back up his mom, and then he's like, down the road, if they get bigger, better, can I take mine from my home, have you guys install them at my mom's place, and then I get the better ones? I'm like, yeah, no reason not to. They're all compatible with one another, unless they introduce some incompatibility that we're not expecting. I would not expect that.
Good one, TJ. Hey, one question from the audience was, hey, I have solar from another installer. Can you guys still retrofit storage with that solution?
Yep. In most cases, yes. We'll look at how it was designed. And if we need to change the interconnection point, we might give that installer a call and say, hey, we're installing this system, if we change an interconnection point, will that void the warranty? And then have a conversation, with you as the client to say, hey, they said no problem. Many times we don't have to change the interconnection point, so we're not changing anything about their system. We're just simply adding functionality to them, to an existing solar system. It looks exactly like the grid to them. So grid's up, grid's still up. It looks the same, so it shouldn't void any warranties. I got one more slide on costs, and then we can take more questions or we can wrap it up.
Good.
All right, so here's the major how much. So Tesla charges $6,500 for a Powerwall. We charge $6,300. The backup gateway is required to have any backup power, so that's $1,100. There is a lot of design, engineering, permitting, and installation. In most cases, we have to do quite a bit of electrical cleanup. If we become the service entrance, we have to separate all your grounds from your neutrals, because the backup gateway becomes that. So there is significant electrical work. It's usually 2 electricians for 2 days. So fully installed out of pocket, 15 to 18K. After the 26% federal tax credit, 11 to 13K for a single Powerwall.
And what's the ratio, TJ, John asks, from gateways to Powerwalls?
1 gateway per 200 amp service. So if you have a 200 amp service, it'd be 1 gateway, and then you can have up to 10 Powerwalls. If you had a 400 amp service, most commonly we'll back up 1 of the 200 amp panels, just like I said. We are actually just got the go-ahead recently from Tesla that we could add multiple gateways to a site. So if you had 200 amp panels and you wanted to back it both up, we would put, that would be 2 gateways, 1 for each 200 amp service, and then at least 1 Powerwall per gateway.
Awesome, great. Folks, we just have about 3 minutes left in our webinar and wanted to hold a little bit of space for any lingering questions you might have out there. Then we'll wrap it up.
Sounds good. Yeah, if you're interested in more, feel free to go to our website. We have lots of Q&A there. There's also an easy form to fill out if you want to talk to us about getting a free estimate. Happy to do it. Throwing up here kind of our storage design process. Here's a lot of the questions that we ask. We actually will send you a survey of what are you trying to do, what's important to you, what are you trying to protect against, information about your solar system if you have one, if we're backing up well pumps or air conditioners, some details. And we'll actually, after this whole COVID thing, we normally we'd come on site and survey that all. At least for the time being, we're just having you take a lot of pictures for us, sending us pictures so we can collect the information we need to do the design. Installation wise, we're out into, I think we're out into June, July right now. We have probably 50 Powerwalls in our warehouse, in our Seattle warehouse. I'm not sure in our Portland warehouse, and I think they're all sold right now. But we're not having any problems so far getting them in. They are super popular. If you're interested in taking advantage of the federal tax credit, I wouldn't wait too long. Or as the weather gets nice like it does now, COVID notwithstanding, but we're seeing roughly double the interest that we normally see. I think because people are home and they have, they're working from home and they have a little bit more time to research and make some phone calls. So if you're interested, let us know. Apologize if there's any waits. We are seeing a lot of demand for both solar and battery storage. I think I think it gives some people are a little concerned. I don't see the utilities having issues with grid stability during COVID. A lot of workers, up to 40%, according to the Einstein Institute, might be affected from being sick, having to not being able to go into work, or having to take care of family members. But I still think that still leaves them plenty of emergency personnel to handle any major challenges out there.
Thanks, TJ. I got a good question from Gerald. Maybe this could be one of our last questions. Are there programs for loans for batteries?
Great question. Yep. Yes, there definitely is. There's credit unions that have discounted rates through some grants. You can talk to any bank and get a loan, but there are some solar and storage specific loans. I've seen them as low as 3.99% up to $70,000. So that's a pretty big solar and a storage system. We size it based upon your needs and your requirements, but there's definitely loans out there. I'd highly recommend it at 3.5–4%. That's pretty inexpensive money. So you're not really taking anything out of pocket, and then your utility savings, federal tax credit, you can often re-amortize your loan once for free to really get a nice low loan amount, and then the utility savings, you just think that's money not going out of your pocket, $50, $100, $200 a month. That's going to reduce or make that money available for your loan.
Awesome. Great. I got another question from Rita. She asked, if the battery's full and not used, does the extra go to the grid? How does that?
Yep, exactly. When the grid is up, the extra will go to the grid, just like I showed early on. So if there were a battery in here, so in between here is where the battery system would be. So if the grid is up, it definitely flows back out. If the grid is down, let's say we had an earthquake right now, the grid was cut, then your solar, you would want to try to do as much as you can during the day when there's excess solar. So your batteries might be full. Usually the batteries are full by, roughly by noon. And then your inverter is making too much and the Powerwall system will shut it down. So you would definitely want to, on a really nice day, you would want to focus, by noon, your batteries are full if there's an outage. Now, hey, the afternoon, run the laundry, do the dry, do the dishwasher, charge your EV, run as much as you can to take advantage of excess solar. Otherwise, it just will get turned off. But when the grid is up, definitely all flows out. You don't have to worry about it. It's completely automatic. At any time during the day, it could be going back and forth, back and forth. If we look here at, what this home is using, it's going back and forth. Actually, got to go to the day.
While you're going there, I have one more question.
Yep. Fire away.
Chuck asks, he's gotten kind of conflicting information from solar installers as to whether solar inverter setup is better than the other for anticipating storage. Is there any material difference?
So if you're going to do, let me make sure I got that question right. You broke up just a little bit. So which solar inverter you go with, is it materially changed for the a Powerwall system? So there is, this is definitely where you want to have somebody that knows what they're doing. I just talked to a client, he went with another contractor out in like Richland, and he wanted to do a Powerwall, and I'm like, well, the inverter that they spec'd and the solar system is too large for a single Powerwall. You have to do two. So there is definitely some insights that a good designer is going to know. If you're open to non-Tesla Powerwall, then yeah, then the inverter system sometimes comes with a battery system. But again, you should make sure your designer understands those systems as well. Tesla, what's great about Tesla is it's AC coupled to solar, so it can really pair with any solar system. But if it is, sizing wise, there is some definite cutoffs that if you go over that, and we've heard this, that some contractors will say, well, we'll just do one Powerwall with that anyway. And it's like, you just voided the warranty. Tesla will not warranty that. If you put a 10K inverter with a single Powerwall, you could damage the Powerwall. You can cause, major damage and short that thing. That's a lot of power. It needs two to be able to handle that inrush current. So again, if you're looking just at Tesla, it's very flexible. If you want to do a different battery system, then definitely call us. We'll talk through the pros and cons of each of other battery systems. Like I said, we write up summaries of 40 some battery systems. There's a reason why we don't do a lot of other battery systems. There's just a lot of limitations to them or unneeded complexities. Most of the leading systems that are on the market are coming out with battery systems for them. So SolarEdge and Enphase are coming out, but they all have their pros and cons. So we kind of focus this one on Tesla Powerwall, but I'm happy to talk about other ones one-on-one, and all of our staff are trained on other battery systems. And if you have a really specific question, they'll pull in me or one of our engineers to answer it.
All right, TJ, thank you so much for all your expert advice. I'm going to wrap it up here. Folks, you'll notice there on the console, there's handouts there as well. Hopefully you saw out 14 questions to ask your solar and battery installer. That's a good way to get a guide as to how to kick the tires on those installers. 2, there's if anyone you know is interested in this job in solar or storage, kind of built a guide there for you. And then I know there's at least one person interested in preparing a new build or a new home for solar and storage. So there's a guide there too. We will be sending out a recording. Thank you guys so much for your time and attention. Look for other webinars at a-rsolar.com/webinars. And there's several other recorded webinars there too. Y'all stay safe out there. Have an awesome afternoon, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.